Welcome back to Urban Monk TV. Let's finish the exhaust and get to work on the frame. Hey, welcome back. So I realize it has been a while since I posted a video. I apologize for that. It was the Labor Day weekend, last weekend, and my family and I decided to get out of town and have a little R&R, and I didn't do a single thing last weekend on any of my bikes. So, and then as usual, work has been crazy. So we're back and let's continue with this. We're going to look at the exhaust some more, finish that up, and get into the frame a little bit and keep moving forward. So what I've done here with these ignition coils is went out on eBay and saw that they are readily available. So I can get them if I need them. And what I've been thinking about is the fact that these were working. And yes, they've been leaking out some of their internal insulating gel, but frankly, what I did was just clean these up a little bit and took a knife and scraped away the gel so that I can see where the cracks are. And you know, there are cracks for sure, but they're not real great. And the amount of gel that has come out doesn't amount to much. Sorry. So there's plenty more still in there. And I happen to have some of this plastic epoxy laying around that I used for another project on my pool. And I am going to first try to fill those cracks with the plastic epoxy and use these. If they then fail down the road, I know I can get the parts again. And then a universal coil will likely always be available, and I could use those too. So just trying to save a little money and go with a part that was working. If it doesn't work, it doesn't take a whole lot to take the tank off and replace these. It's just not that difficult down the road once the bike is already put together. So that's the path I'm going to take. So those just then need to cure for 24 hours, which heck, it's going to be weeks before I get back to them. But okay, so after a full night, 24 hours of curing, we can look at what has resulted with my ignition coils. Again, these were working. And that plastic epoxy has sealed those cracks quite nicely. I've used this epoxy in my pool. Has a thing called a skimmer, and so this thing's underwater and the pump is pulling on it. There was a broken piece of plastic off of this skimmer basket, and with that piece missing, I was losing a lot of the vacuum that was supposed to go to the thing that sweeps around my pool and sucks up all the stuff off the bottom. So this pump is very large and there's a lot of force going through this hole that that was now giving up all my vacuum, and my skimmer thingy, sucker, I don't know what you want to call it, bottom feeder, wasn't working. I used this same plastic cure on that, and that is got force into it. It's wet all the time, and it's been working great, holding up really well. So this stuff is strong. I expect this to work, and I just saved a lot of money. One more note on these. Yes, I could have bought like an MGO, very cheap, generic coil. the length on those was longer, so that was going to require some modification of the mounts. And at $25 a piece or so on eBay, I'm still looking at 50 bucks. And is an MGO coil as reliable, is a brand new MGO coil as reliable as a used Suzuki part? I'm going with used Suzuki, honestly. Okay, let's talk a little bit more on style and design. I mentioned that I was going to use what's called the divine proportion or the golden ratio, and I've been playing with some math here, and God, the Suzuki GS is just the best setup for this. I don't know, I've never made a CB750 or worked with a CB550. They look like they're really good too, but this thing's just got great dimensions. So I measured the tank, and I'm about 23 and a half inches. That's 23 and a half inches of visual mass. And so then I take that, get my calculator out, I go 23.5 divided by the golden ratio, 1.618, and I get about 14.5 roughly. So if I go 14.5 back from there, puts me right here. Well, look at how beautiful that line is right there. And so that's a great spot to be starting the back of my next visual mass. And then if I take that 14.5 and divide that, oop, what are you doing? If I take 14.5 and divide by 1, what are you doing? 1.618, sorry, 8.97. Well, okay, so from here, I go back about 8.97 is right here, and look where that ends up. Right at the back of the rear hub, which is another piece of visual mass. And so, like I was talking before on the next video, or the previous video, I want a visual mass here. You'll have the seat, and then of course the tank is there. And so these bikes really balance out well and make coming up with a good looking aesthetic, an attractive design really easy. And so then the next piece, of course, would be to think about the height of this. What are we, about 8 3/4? Well, let's think about it. 8 3/4. 8.75 divided by 1.618, 5.4. So if my hump were about 5.4, just call it 5.5. If I can keep this thing to 5.5 inches tall back here, my head in the way, yeah, then that should look good. It should be pleasing to the eye, even though we may not even really know why. Nature is full of that ratio. Look at a seashell, and look at the Milky Way galaxy, look at a flower. The Fibonacci sequence is tied to this divine ratio, and if you use it and think about it, you probably end up with a more attractive looking design. Go on Craigslist and look, just Google Cafe Racer, or go on Google Images and look at Cafe Racer, and there's just so many bad designs out there because we didn't think about this stuff. Granted, some frames and bikes are more difficult to get there with. The Suzuki GS, really easy to get there, especially the 79 and prior, 78 to 79, awesome metrics, proportions. And then there's one more piece about design that I want to talk about here. This is in regards to a critical visual line. This line here is what they call the bone line. And you see how the fuel tank kind of dips below it. So what I'm going to need to do is adapt this so that it comes up to matching that line all the way back. So there's going to have to be some small 1-inch lift here. Very subtle thing. You may just be inclined to go with it stock and not take the trouble and the time to do this, but ultimately you're going to end up with just something that's a little off, and people that view your bike, their subconscious picks up on this stuff. And you know, it's like I used to say when I played music, we the musicians knew that we were making mistakes, and there'd be somebody that would say, you know, it doesn't matter, the audience doesn't know. The audience doesn't know that they know, they just know that they don't really like it for some reason. They can't articulate why they don't like it, but people will see this. They'll look at the bike and they'll go, yeah, it's alright, that's nice. But if it's like this, they'll just go, wow, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Well, one would hope anyways. So, bone line. And then there's other lines to consider. These ones you have a bit less control over. But so I've measured back to that 14 and a half, 14 3/4 distance. Really it comes out to exactly where this seat mount was. Sorry, I'm kind of shaking the camera a bit. And what I want to do is have this hoop end right at the back of the hub down there. And so, kind of goofy how this angle works, but that's about where I want it. And I'm going to cut so that I have a little extra. I can always cut more, but I don't want to undercut and be trying to add material in there. And then, as they say, measure twice and cut once. Maybe measure 3 times. So I used my left-hand side to do my measurements to come up with this mark as to where to make my cut. And then I want to of course make the same mark on the other side, but the reference points are not exactly the same. You just got different things in different positions, and what do you measure from? Certainly the gas tank was one, so I did a crisscross measurement from the corners of the gas tank. But then another one is just getting a line straight up, so I could use, you know, the center line on the tire, and I got my square out and I just visually checked that, you know, so that's a nice long straight edge that I can line up. Tough to see on the camera, but for me, I know I've got these 2 marks really perpendicular from each other here, and I'm confident those are good cuts. So this other header pipe I've got is not in such great shape. It really rusted out at this point, so I've got far less metal to work with, but I've got something I can get a bite on. So I'm going to put this galvanized insert in there, and then I think I can get over it with this and get down to enough metal in here, but I have to clean this up first. So I've got my Dremel out and my grinding wheel, and we'll get things cleaned up.
perfect, but we'll get some paint on this. What it is solid. You know, I'm not the greatest welder, and that isn't the greatest welder to weld with, but it does get the job done, and then you can just grind away whatever problems you find yourself with. So it's about filling in material in holes, and I went back to it once. I could fill in here a little bit, maybe, but it's on the underside, so we'll see. I'm going to grind away here, and a lot of rust to remove here still.
So let's talk briefly about why I've done this. Why haven't I gone out and just bought a brand new set of exhaust and headers? A couple of reasons. One, budget. This again is a budget project. I keep saying that. I really want to keep the cost of this down because most people, I think, cannot just go throw endless money at projects like this. We have lives, we have families, we have limited incomes, and I really want to prove that you can make a fantastic looking, reliable, good riding motorcycle for less money than you think. And especially with the number of bikes like these that are available on Craigslist really cheap. About the only area of the country I find that they're not cheap is where I live in Southern California. Everybody's kind of turned on to these things down here, but elsewhere in the country you can easily get one of these things for $500–600, sometimes less, with a clear title. Anyways, so budget is one reason I did this. Two, the only thing available new for the 77 to 79 Suzuki GS550 is Mac exhaust. I've never bought or used a Mac exhaust. I've seen on online forums countless people over and over say don't buy a Mac, that Mac stands for make another choice. Hate to go ripping on a brand that I've never tried here, but I've seen a significant volume of people that just say stay away from that, and they're $350, something like that, and that's a huge amount of money for a budget project. This whole bike was not much more than that. So would I buy that if I had absolutely nothing to work with from the original exhaust? Yes, I would. You got to have an exhaust system, and I'd probably just not put the rear pipe on that Mac system and use these Dunstalls that I've installed, which are very inexpensive. But yes, these are rusty, and I've done some soaking in vinegar, as you saw in a previous episode, and brought quite a bit of that rust down and made this more manageable. So once I saw that I could get rid of a lot of it, I can get rid of the rest of it through grinding and wire wheel, and then it isn't going to look good. These aren't going to be chrome. I'm certainly not going to take them to be chrome. That's going to be outside of budget. But there's two things I can do with this. One, I can wrap these in exhaust wrap, back to here, and then go with the chrome from there on. That's a good look. That's not that wrap is free either. That has a cost to it. What I'm more than likely going to do is VHT, very high temperature header paint. This is flame proof, and I'll do black flat. So black going back to chrome, another good look. That's the plan there. Or I might wrap it, and I can even paint it black and decide later to wrap it if I don't like the look of the black. So that's why I've done what I've done with the exhaust. Okay, so that's going to be a wrap. We got our exhaust done. More to do on the frame. We'll cut that next week. I'm sorry, this one's a little bit shorter, but just ran out of weekend here. And thanks for watching. If you like what I'm doing, please click subscribe so you know what the next episodes are. Hey, here's what we're going to work on coming up. Suspension. We've got probably some seriously unholy liquid floating around inside of this that I expect is going to smell wonderful. and then I got to get some new seals on here, and I'll show you what my plans are for suspension. So that's coming up. Of course, continuing with the frame, and we got to paint those exhaust headers. So hey, thanks for watching.